My name is Charlene Margot, and I'm the founder and director of the Parent Education Series and co-founder and CEO of our new nonprofit organization, the Parent Venture. We are so glad to welcome you all here today for the Parent Forum in English number 4 with Dr. Eran Magen. Eran is beaming into us today from Connecticut, formerly from the San Francisco Bay Area, but now has relocated. So again, thank you so much to you, Dr. Magen. We're excited for today. So as those of you know who are familiar with our program, the Parent Forum is a place for you parents to converse, have conversations, and connect with one another. It is different than our typical webinar programs, which are more teaching-based and strategy-based. So today, again, Dr. Magen is going to start us off with about 10 minutes of content, and then we're going to follow it up with conversation and questions from you, our attendees. Today, just as a note, we're set up as a Zoom webinar. So we are going to have Eran add you attendees as panelists. So you'll become part of the group like a meeting. So it'll end up looking like a meeting where you can then keep your camera and audio on during that portion of the event, okay? So that's how it's gonna look different format-wise. So we're gonna start with, again, about 10 minutes of content on our topic today, how to be your child's favorite conversation partner. That's something that we always want. And as I usually say when I'm standing on a stage or in a multi-purpose room, the purpose of the Parent Education Series is to give you, the parents, information, opportunities to talk to your children. As the Parent Forum is 100% focused on that. We are so grateful to the Sequoia Healthcare District. This is an initiative of that organization. And we also thank the Sequoia Union High School District and the Parent Venture for your sponsorship. So I've talked about the format a little bit. We're going to start again with very short content from Dr. Magen, and then we're going to move into conversation where everybody will be on camera together. If you would like to ask a question and you're not comfortable doing it in person on screen, please feel free to type it into the Q&A box. The chat, my partner Bev Hartman will be working in the chat. She'll be posting relevant links, but we'd like to have questions if you have them go into the Q&A, but we hope that you will participate live and ask your questions if you feel comfortable. All right, and also this event will be video recorded for those of you who would like to share it with a child, a student, a partner, or a friend, okay? And the video will appear on our Video Library YouTube channel, which has had more than 11,000 views, including more than 3,000 since COVID. So thank you again to all of you who are participating and enjoying our resources. Let me tell you a little bit about our keynote speaker today, Dr. Eran Magen. He earned his master's in education and PhD in psychology from Stanford University and completed his postdoctoral training in population health at the University of Pennsylvania. Dr. Magen served as the research director for the University of Pennsylvania's Department of Counseling and Psychological Services before founding the Center for Supportive Relationships. Dr. Magen works with public school districts, universities, hospitals, and private corporations, where he teaches educators, clinicians, managers, and parents how to build stronger, more joyful relationships in their professional and personal lives. Dr. Magen's work has been published in top-tier scientific journals, including Psychological Science and Motion and Academic Pediatrics, and he has been cited in popular media outlets from Allure magazine to Psychology Today. Please join me in a really warm welcome for Eran Magen. Take it away, Eran. I'm going to sit on camera with you. You bet.
Okay, thank you very much. Hello, everybody. It's well, it will be nice to see everybody. Right now, I see a list of names, some of which I recognize, and some are new friends. So, like Charlene was saying, I'm going to go pretty quickly through some content and some things to think about, and then we'll switch over to a conversation format and spend most of our time talking. Sometimes people ask about things that are related to what I talked about, and sometimes people ask about totally different things. As long as it's in the realm of parenting and relationships, we should be okay. If you ask something that's above my pay grade, I'll let you know. So let me share my screen and get us started. One day, I'll become a real pro at this and figure out how to share a slideshow that's already started. Okay. How to be your child's favorite conversation partner. Some thoughts, just as a conversation starter for you. Charlene already introduced me nicely. Pardon me, forgot to silence my phone. Charlene introduced me nicely in terms of housekeeping. If you have questions, like Charlene said, you can post them into the Q&A. Charlene will read them for you later, or you can write them down and then ask them yourself in about 10, maybe 15 minutes. In general, the kinds of, just as a general framework, the way that I orient to relationships and specific interactions, I think about how much charge is in a given situation. So there are low charge situations, and that's when we build relationships. There are medium charge situations when people have more stronger emotions, you know, upset, scared, angry, afraid, proud, whatever it is, strong emotions. And during those times, we support them with those emotions. And then there's kind of crisis situations when people have very, very strong emotions or external things going on, and the main focus is being safe, actually, not building the relationship any stronger. Today, we're just talking about really kind of everyday Humpty Dum situations. Nobody has particularly strong emotions, but we'd like to talk with our child. So the main thing that I want to convey here, I think one of the two bottom lines, is that none of this is supposed to be a trick. Right? The main goal is actually to get to know your child, and the thought that I hope you'll be having in the back of your head as you're talking to your child is, I want to get to know you better because you're interesting and fun for me to know, right? Just that, not because of the implications to your parenting skills or because this is the kind of conversations you think you should be having, just wanting to get to know the other person, being genuinely curious about the other person. Okay. A framework that I'm hoping you can keep in your head kind of in general as you're going through this is this idea of the relational bank account. So think about the account balance as representing the amount of goodwill in the relationship. So the more goodwill is in the relationship, the more the other person trusts you, is honest with you, is vulnerable with you, puts in more effort toward things that you request, more cooperative, and so on. And this includes, of course, wanting to share stuff with you and talk with you. And the way that you make deposits is by showing that you care or respect the other person. Right? Any demonstration of care will increase the account balance. Any demonstration of respect will increase the account balance. And you lower the account balance by either showing that you don't care about the person or that you don't respect the person. And there are many ways that we can do this just in the course of daily life if we're not careful, or by asking the other person to inconvenience him or herself, do anything that they wouldn't do naturally, right? Which is okay. That's part of relationships. We ask each other to do things for one another. So withdrawals and deposits are normal. It's not going to stay static, but you want to be depositing as often as possible in order to keep that account balance high. There's a lot more to say about this, but again, just as a general overview, I think it's enough to just have the framework in your head. Okay, onward. These, don't write these down, but just to give you a flavor of, even in the course of a single, simple face-to-face interactions, there's all these things that you can do, and doing any of those constitutes as a relational deposit. Right, saying thank you, taking time to say thank you and meaning it, giving good praise, redirecting behavior in a respectful way rather than kind of in a super top-down, militaristic, punitive way, checking in with the other person, focusing on their success, and so on. Okay, some specific tips about how to be a desired conversation partner. So, and I'll talk a little bit more in detail about each of those. So ask open-ended questions about people and things that your child cares about. Once your child gets going, stay out of the way, right? Don't change the topic. Don't use it as an opportunity to bring up other things that are important to you. Just let your child talk about things that your child cares about, right? And encourage more sharing by paraphrasing what your child is saying, doing a wig. For those of you that have been to any of the workshops where I talk about it, a wig, what I got. You tell them back what you got from what they're saying. Ask for your child's opinions and advice. This is a fantastic way to show that you respect your child, and a child at any age will have some preferences about something, right? And the more you can pause and give them choice, even if it's a very simple choice, right? You can limit the choice if the child is very young or if the child is pretty overwhelmed. But giving some kind of choice and then acting by it, or at least considering it seriously, wins major points. It's good to feel appreciated. Remember, in general, to be curious, not desperate, right? Your life doesn't depend on being able to have that conversation. You just want to come at it from a curious standpoint. And don't nag. Bottom line is often they won't want to talk. And if they don't, that's okay. You share time together and you make yourself available. But you don't want to build the habit of them not responding to you. I'll talk about that a little bit more later. Okay, let's talk about this first thing, this idea of asking open-ended questions about people and things that your child cares about. So here's a little worksheet for yourselves, right? If you want to write it and fill it out, or just think about how you would fill it out. What are the names of your child's friends, right? If you're picking up your kid from school and you start by saying, how's Zoe doing? That's a great question, right? Because Zoe is interesting to your child. What does your child like to feel? Does your child like to feel like, are there specific emotions that are fun for your child? Are there specific positions, right? Does your child like to feel like he knows everything and he has answers? Because you can ask questions that your child has answers to. Does your child like to feel like he's very curious or making good progress? You could ask questions that point in that direction. Does your child like to feel popular? You can ask questions about that, right? What is your child really into? What gets your child excited? Is it, if your child is, between the ages of 1 and 5, your child may care desperately about heavy construction vehicles. That's my case, not my child's case. Or your child may care about dance, or about cooking, or about gymnastics, or soccer, or there's going to be something, right? And you probably know what it is. But it's good to have it front and center, because it's also things that you could be learning a little bit more about and have more informed conversations. What does your child really enjoy doing? Not just interested in, but activities that your child enjoys taking part of. And what's the thing that your child is looking forward to, either eagerly or anxiously, right? Are you aware of those different things? You probably are, right? Can you mark them in your calendar and remember to ask? It doesn't have to be tests at school that are kind of the obvious things, or parties that you need to drive them to because you know about these things. But are there any other things? Does your child friend have surgery, and your child is kind of thinking about that? Is there some other big event that's happening? Is a band touring that your child really likes? Anything your child mentions that has a specific time to it, consider making a note and putting it in your calendar so you can follow up. Because following up is a wonderful way of showing that you care about what your child cares about. Open-ended questions, I think you know this. I'm just going to kind of blast through this. Avoid yes/no questions, because they'll be answered by yes or no, and that's going to be you're still going to kind of be sitting there, both of you, lump-like. Avoid asking questions about the best or the worst and things like that. It's kind of high stakes, right? You start spinning. If I say, what's your absolute favorite food? And you're like, and if I say, what are foods you really like? And you're like, oh, well, I like this and this. It's just easier, right? So lower the bar a little bit, and focus on questions that start with what. They just tend to bring up more, not exclusively, but just, again, get yourself into the habit. So here are some examples. How was school? Fine. That's always the answer, right? Did you see Julian today? Yeah, right? So can we translate those into something a little more conversation opening, right? So what did you learn today at social science? Specific, right? So this is quite specific. It's hard to answer that with fine or with yes. I mean, your child may say nothing or, nothing, but this one has a higher likelihood of getting a specific answer. Oh, we learned about, I don't know, families in monkeys. You're like, oh, what did you learn about? Something is going to come out of this. Similarly, how did it go today with Julian in volleyball? Because you know that was the issue that your child was thinking about going into school, right? So just be more specific, be better informed, and ask more informed questions. Okay, second tip was, once your child gets going, stay out of the way and encourage more sharing by paraphrasing. There's no, extra worksheet on this. There's an entire workshop that I do on this, but I think you get the general idea again, right? Once your child starts talking about something, paraphrase, Do not steer the conversation in different directions. Certainly do not use it as an opportunity to bring up things that your child doesn't want to talk about, right? Or references to past mistakes made or responsibilities left unfulfilled or anything like that. The experience of talking with you ideally should be a positive experience and associated with positive things. Don't mix things that feel negative with things that you want to feel positive. Separate them out. So the talking with you is a fun activity. It's a fun thing, and it's not threatening. There's not a risk of kind of a sting coming in from the side as they're talking with you. Ask for opinions and advice. Take them into consideration. So opinions and advice can also be about things that are going on for you at whatever level is appropriate for you to actually share with your child. But really ask. And again, depending on the child's age and level of sophistication and level of interest, you can figure out. So maybe you're asking for advice about home decoration or home renovation or clothes shopping for them or for another sibling or for yourself, or if you have some sort of a social situation at work and you're not sure how to handle it, like maybe talk about it with your child. Again, at a level that's appropriate. It's incredibly gratifying for a child who's a little older to be taken that seriously and to be shared with. Plus, it's an amazing opportunity for you to model the kind of conversation you want happening, and also to learn more about your child by hearing how your child processes these situations. Be curious and not desperate. I mentioned this before. I don't have a lot more to say about that. Just as much as you can, hold that mindset, which will also translate into not nagging, right? It's because nagging is a negative experience, and you just don't want to mix it in with the experience of talking with you or you talking with them, right? So ideally, the habit that you want to build in your child is you talk with each other. Maybe it's in the car, maybe it's at a certain time. There's some context, right? Maybe you go on a walk, maybe you sit together on the couch before, after dinner, or whatever it is. But build a habit of talking, which means also being careful not to build a habit of not talking with you, right? And so if you repeatedly ask questions and your child repeatedly shuts you down, that becomes a conversational habit. Right? So you want to avoid that habit and ask questions that are easy to answer, likely to be answered at a time that's easy and likely for your child to answer, right? And stick to those a lot until there's a strong habit of talking well with one another. So I'm going to wrap up. The general framework, again, is this idea of the relational bank account. You want to show care and respect toward your child in ways that are meaningful for your child, because of course you care very much about your child. You probably respect your child a great deal too, but your child has to know that, and you have to communicate that in ways that are meaningful to your child. And asking about things that your child cares about is at the right time, and keeping track of those things as they're happening in your child's life is a wonderful way to show how much you care. Asking for advice and opinions, great way of showing respect. Not pushing a conversation to happen when your child doesn't want it, great way of showing respect, right? All these things give you points and make it more likely that later on your child will indeed choose to open up with you. Okay, a couple of quick things I wanted to mention, and then we will switch over to talking altogether. One is I have a newsletter, and if you'd like to join it, then you're welcome to. This is the URL. It's myname.com/join. We'll put it in the chat later for those of you that want to do it. The other thing I wanted to mention briefly, because I promised a friend that I would, is I'm running, we're calling it a master class. So it's limited to 12 participants. We do 4 sessions, and in each session we go very in depth into these topics that are listed there, basically about building relationships with children and navigating emotionally difficult conversations. So small group, a lot of exercise, a lot of discussion. You're very welcome to join. The URL is there on magen.com/masterclass. It's still discounted until the end of the month. It starts mid-November. All the details are there. My email is at the bottom if you want to ask me any questions about this or about anything else. Okay, so this concludes that part of running through the presentation. What I'd like to do now is what Charlene was mentioning is switch over to more of a free conversation, and we can talk about whatever you want. really in that conversation. And in order to do that, what we'll do is we're going to change your role in this meeting to a panelist, which means that you'll be able to see and hear one another. So, be responsible about that. So as we do this, you're going to be taken out of the meeting and then come back into it. There's nothing you need to do, but it's just going to happen for you automatically. So I'm going to start this process now and prepare questions and thoughts to share if you have them. I will.
Okay, again, just to confirm what Eran said, those of you who know Zoom, this event was started as a webinar, and then we decided to really make it a more open conversation. So Eran is turning you all magically into panelists, so we'll be on screen together and you can ask questions. If you have a question that you would like to ask but don't want to voice it, please do put it in the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and I will read them out. So again, we hope you feel comfortable enough to share a question or comment. But if you don't, please do put it there in the Q&A button and we will share it. Okay, so Eran, you doing your thing.
I'm clicking everybody, and then I'll stop the screen share thing because I think it's still up, and then we can all just talk like people.
Okay. And just to note again, my partner Bev Hartman is putting links, including ways to access Eran's website and newsletter and blog in the chat box. The recording is on, just to let you know. As always, we record events to post to our video library, the Parent Education Video Library. If you do not wish to be recorded when you're talking, you can have your camera off, but we hope that you'll stay on with us. Again, this forum is an initiative of the Sequoia Healthcare District. Dr. Karen Lee is the Healthy Schools Director. We really want to give you a chance to converse with one another and feel supported during this time. Okay.
Almost done.
Awesome. So Eran, you may want to turn off shared screen when you get a minute. I know you're busy.
Yes, I finished now promoting everybody. Now that's done.
Again.
All right.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for bearing with us.
So now's the time. Questions or thoughts, I guess, if you want to raise your hands, or if you want to raise your digital hands. I see most people don't have their video on. We would love to be able to see people and just have it feel like a conversation, if you are amenable.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. So if people have questions, you can share it through the Q&A, or you can, oh, okay. I mean, if you're driving, don't feel compelled to do anything that's not safe. Either through the chat or the Q&A, or raise your hand. So I guess, is Vikas your first name?
Yes, that's my first name. Hi, Aaron. Hi, Sharvin.
Hello.
I'm joining you from London, UK. I thank you for the presentation. It was quite concise, and I could relate to a lot of it. My question specifically is about separated parents and how, I mean, the presentation that you've given, is it applicable to all scenarios, or it is also applicable when you have separated parents?
Do you have a specific kind of potential limitation at mind, or exclusion, something that would not work in this kind of situation?
No, I would think that it just the scenario of a separated relationship is where a child spends a certain time with one parent and then certain time with other parent. What I try to normally avoid is, for my daughter, she's 9-year-old, and try to ask questions which she's not already told to the mother. And I hope it's happening the other way around as well, but I can only do what I can do with my daughter. And I just want to understand, I want her to obviously engage with me. And I think the open-ended question was a very good point that you raised, which I think I often fall into the trap. How was school? And then it was fine, and that's it. And it's it's good to ask some open-ended questions so you actually get some kind of answers, because so I think my daughter, she has a lot of these questions and bombardments and nagging happening at the other end, and I want to do less of it or none of it and make her feel more relaxed. And actually my approach has worked quite well, because often our conversations just flow with and one of the things that you mentioned was that go with the flow, and I often find that very helpful, because I'm showing interest in what she's saying, and then a lot of things comes out of that as naturally they would. So yeah, I'm just wanted to know your experience of is it different when the family setup is different, or is it the same applicable in every family setup?
I think it's great that you're being sensitive, about the fact that there's going to be some kind of doubling up and repetition, because of the double household. I don't think that there's a problem with asking about something that she may have talked about before, because I think about myself, and when there's something on my mind, I'll talk about it with a few people usually, right? I don't mind repeating. I get clearer and clearer every time I talk about it. If it's an important event, certainly I'll tell multiple people, so I think with regards to that, you can follow her lead. And also she's 9, she has a lot of her brain at this point. You can ask her, right? You can say, is it boring for you, or do you want to tell me? Or you can just have that conversation, say, hey, how did soccer go? She says, oh, it was okay. And you're like, do you want to talk about this, or would you prefer not? Just follow her lead. I don't know if, was there anything specific that happened that made you feel like she's like, well, I already talked about this, I don't want to do it again?
So I do feel when I ask her that she's already said this to the mother, and then so because she doesn't want to repeat it, probably that's the reason why. And I get a feel from, obviously have been doing this for some time now, so I've got a hang of it. But obviously, as much as I'm also inquisitive in knowing what's going on in school, but I also don't want to put her in pressure in telling me what she's already said before. So I think what you're saying is kind of, I resonated, go with the flow and follow her lead. And if she's not interested, probably try and find out why she's not interested. And hopefully that'll give me an answer, and I can then, go ahead in subsequently in further conversations based on that.
Yeah, I think follow her lead. I would not assume in advance that she doesn't want to repeat, because at least I know that I often want to repeat. A conversation with you is going to be different than a conversation with her mom. Right. And also, I guess more of a general point, it's not obvious to me that, if it's not obvious to me that she would want to only share with one person. And if she does, it's not obvious to me that it wouldn't be you, right? It might. So you may as well ask, and if not, then not. That's okay.
All right. Iran, we have another question that's come in, I think is a really good one. You can speak to this. This attendee says, I have a child 9, and for him, I'm dumb and stupid. If I want to talk or say something or teach him something where I express with words, he ignores me, or he tells me that I don't have anything to say. Do you have any advice to help me talk to him?
I'm trying to imagine the situation. It would be helpful for me, I think, to know a little more. It's hard for me just off of that, and maybe, if this person wants to add information, does it happen always? Is it about a certain thing? Say good morning, and your child says, I say good morning, and then my child says you're stupid? Or is it only if I'm trying to teach something, suggest something, is it something like that? What's the context in which this happens? Would just be helpful for me, because I think I could go on for a long time about something totally irrelevant.
I think I can elaborate about that. It's me.
Oh yeah, please.
So anything. It can be from good morning.
Did we just lose your audio? Oleg? Hello?
Oleg is gone. She's not on screen anymore.
Oh, poof. Okay. Well, I guess
maybe she'll rejoin us. Sorry about that.
Maybe she'll rejoin. Rahila, I see you were waiting patiently to talk.
Yeah, I was wondering if you had some tips in the current situation we find ourselves in, right? This pandemic, locked in the house. And I have a newly minted teenager as of yesterday morning and a 15-year-old. And I think for them, engagement becomes an issue because there's such a lack of privacy, right? Normally kids go to school, vent to their real people, and then come home and be the people they are at home. So I'm struggling with engagement because it feels like it's like, back off. I need some space on a lot of the interactions, especially with my 15-year-old. So anything to kind of, it's just to get that. I think when we engage, it often feels like we're talking like that. The engagement isn't happening. Words are being exchanged, but there's no communication happening. And I feel it's heightened by this, just being confined in the same space constantly these days.
So it's the lack of separation that makes them need more space.
It's almost like I have to maintain my barrier constantly because I don't really have, we try to do physical privacy, but psychologically you're still in the same house, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that to me feels like the barrier, it's harder to cross that barrier. My 15-year-old, for example, the best conversations I've ever had with him was when he's sitting in the back of the car.
Yeah.
We don't have to, yeah. So, and that doesn't happen often these days. So it's more additional tips to engage for older kids.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that the back of the car thing is really interesting and pretty common because it's such a less intense situation. Anyway, we're not facing each other. It's okay to have pauses. You can look at other things, and it's okay. It doesn't look like I'm distracted. It works really well. So I like that example a lot. And the question is, especially, and as you're saying, in this context right now where, we are in each other's face constantly, or at least like we can feel each other, with our whiskers like all around us. How do we create more space? And I agree with your, instinct that it's actually, we need better defined off time and on time. Because right now there's this fuzzy maybe time constantly, right? We could be talking and we could be not. So one thing that comes to mind is to actually try to establish more of a routine. The routine can be in time or in space. You talked already about respecting physical boundaries. So you could do it either that way or in time, where there's a time when we talk and like the rest of the time we don't expect it and we don't push for it, because sometimes also if we're constantly low grade trying to get a conversation started and they're constantly low grade shutting it down, and now again we're kind of in the habit of not doing it. Whereas if you can create really clear contexts when this is happening, and you're like, hey David, let's go make dinner together, and it's like, tell me about your day. What have you been doing? And it's during dinner that this happens. And again, Charlene is very good at mentioning this repeatedly. So I'm gonna take a page from her book. You can discuss all this explicitly with your kids, right? You can say, I want to talk and it's fun. I'm thinking about the conversation we had in the car. That was nice. I realize that now this is strange because we're kind of in each other's space all the time. So I'm thinking about maybe we kind of say, our time to socialize is when we make dinner or whatever. How does that sound to you? And just get a read, right? But again, you're modeling, you're being super respectful when you're when you're consulting, right? And your child also gets to make part of that decision. And you're modeling shared decision making and kind of addressing a socially kind of uncomfortable thing, but that is there for a reason, and you have good intentions there, right? So I would say maybe these two things: set up clear boundaries around times to yes connect and times to not, and respect the not, unless the other person really wants to, but err on the side of over respecting the not, and then also consult with your kids about it, about the times that would work. That's how I'm thinking about it. What do you think?
You know, it makes sense to me because I have to admit I'm the guilty parent who initiates a contact and then I get the response that puts my hackles up and then I descend into a nagging session. So, or that earlier slide was great because the again, exchange of words happen, but we're not actually connecting or communicating. Often we end up huffing and puffing and retiring to our respective corners for the next round.
Right.
So I think
Right.
it's about compartmentalizing. I get that. And that's something I have to practice. Sorry, my other phone's calling. Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah, my
Regina.
pleasure. And thank you for the word. I think compartmentalizing is really exactly it. Separating out the on times and the off times, and also the sort of, the negative from the positive. Like the positive, keep it just positive and not at all as an opportunity to bring up other things. The more, like, we don't want to confuse between medicine and candy, because then we end up disliking both. There are times for medicine, but candy is just candy. Like, it's just good times. So you don't give candy before medical treatment that's painful, right? Maybe after, because it signals everything's fine now, it's over.
I'm going to steal that particular phrase now. I like that medicine candy one.
Yeah, nothing to steal.
Okay.
Freely given.
Iran, our previous speaker, I think, is back on the line.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I think, I might need to switch to a different headset. I think my headset is not great, so I'm going to put in headphones to make sure that I can hear you well. 1 second. Okay.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Iran, now we can't hear you. We can't. Iran, I don't think we can hear you. No. Technology, we love it when
Technology, here we go.
There we go.
Okay. So yes, we can all hear each other now. Thank you.
So do you want to tell us a little bit more about your situation with your 9-year-old? Did we lose her again? Okay. Well, listen, while we try to figure that out, Iran, I'm going to ask you another question and hope she comes back on the line with us.
Okay.
Ready?
Yes.
Okay. My 12-year-old son likes gaming and we want him to do other activities. That sounds familiar. Every time we watch a show or movie on TV as a family with our teenage girl, my son said he doesn't like it. He wants to have computer time instead. How do we engage him or do things other than just computer time?
I'm curious about what, as you see it, is the benefit of watching TV together over playing computer games.
Joe, are you able to respond to that?
Hi.
Oh,
Hope
hi.
you can hear me okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I just don't want him to spend so much time on the screen because he already spending quite a lot of time on learning. And gaming is okay. We normally say you can do like 1 or 2 hours gaming.
Yeah.
But other than that, I want him to have interest in doing other things and also some physical activity as well, right? Because it's not good to be sitting at the desk all day. Even at nighttime when we're trying to do something as a family.
Yeah.
And he doesn't seem to have interest in whatever we're watching.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like maybe there are two things that you want to accomplish here, maybe even 3. So one is you want him to be just doing more physical activity. The other is you want him to spend time with the family, doing things together with the family, right? Not separately on the computer. And the third is sort of like the first, just less screen time, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so more physical activity away from the computer and more time with the family.
Yep.
Are there things that he does do with the family at all?
Occasionally, he will go out with us to do biking or hiking,
Huh.
but it's after a lot of nagging and like encouragement, or you sometimes even say, "Oh, we let you do something else afterwards."
Sure.
Yeah, so a little bit rewarding. Then he will
Yeah.
be to try.
Rewarding
Yeah,
is a
so
great idea. Yeah. Rewarding is great. And do those activities happen in kind of routine, sort of easily predictable times?
yeah, we try to set it like after he finishes all his class and we finish our work, then we want to go out together at that time. So it's more like a routine time that we
Okay.
try to set up.
Okay. And last question, I think, and then I'll have some opinions. But while going out all together, is he enjoying that? Like once he's actually out?
He seems okay. He didn't complain too much. But he didn't seems like I think he liked biking more than hiking. So, and I think he feels like get some exercise is good for him also. Yeah.
Okay.
But he will also say he doesn't want to do it for too long. Like
Yeah.
a couple hours is a little bit too much. He's saying 1 hour maybe.
A couple hours biking is a lot for me. And I lied a little bit. One more question. Have you asked him, or when you asked him, what did he say about this? You know, when you say, I'd like you to spend more time with the family, I'd like you to do more physical activity. What's his opinion on this?
He said why?
And then you explained,
Yeah.
I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, I said we are a family, so we want to do something together for fun. Yeah, but I guess he doesn't think this is necessary.
Yeah, okay. So you talk about it some, you try to explain it. Okay, so a few thoughts. One is there's this principle that people will do things. Trying to think well, I got into it, so I'll just finish the thought. The idea is that if you want to reward a behavior so it happens more, you need to put something they want more at the other end of it, right? Which is like what you're doing with, you can play after we go biking or something as a family, which is fine. The only thing that stood out for me is that after he finishes his homework, he then goes to do this thing that's not his top choice fun thing in the world. So it's kind of asking to work twice, you know? Like when you finish your work, you get to do more work and then you get a reward. You see what I mean?
Yes.
Because he might be, I mean, I don't know how he feels about school. Maybe he loves it, but a lot of kids don't like desperately want to do their schoolwork. And so if he puts effort and time into doing schoolwork, and by the end of that, he's kind of drained, then you're asking him to go do not the thing that's fun for him. Maybe it's time for him to have fun at that point, you know? So that's just one thing that jumped out at me. And so maybe there's even a different way to sequence it. Maybe after schoolwork, he does get to play, do exactly what he wants and kind of recharge, right? And maybe then after that, there's a time when the whole family goes and does something, walking, biking, watching, talking, playing, whatever it is, right? But he already recharged somewhat.
I guess he did get some time to play computers after school ends, because we're normally not able to go out at the same time after his class finish. But the thing is, he didn't think it's enough. He want to continue.
Yeah, of course he does. So I'm just kind of brainstorming here together with you, okay? And you tell me if it sounds realistic or not. But I wonder if it's possible to, together with him, agree on something that he would think is realistic and reasonable. So for example, if right now you want the family to do things together 5 times a week, and maybe you talk about it with him, and he says that he feels like once a week is reasonable, then maybe you say, okay, what day? and then you have one day when there's no nagging and no fighting. You've agreed about it in advance, right? This thing is going to happen. So kind of adjust, decide together. And again, build a habit of cooperating rather than a habit of always being at odds with one another. Okay, before I continue brainstorming, what do you think? Does that sound realistic?
I think so. Yeah, I think that's realistic. And like you said, we need to get his opinion, right? Not like we have to put something like a very rigid rule that he have to do certain things. So sometimes we do let him just like, okay, you don't want to go, you can just stay home. So someday we do let that happen. So I don't know. It's like, is it because someday we let him do that, someday we don't want him to do that? So it make it a little bit confusing to him. What's the message that we're trying to send, right? So like you said, we should have some agreement beforehand. It will be easier for everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you said it perfectly. I don't want to muddy it by saying more about that. So what you said at the end, I think, yeah, have an agreement, and that agreement you stick to, because part of what you're teaching is that agreements are things that you honor, right? Unless there's some incredible circumstance, but agreements you honor. But you don't want to start negotiating in real time, which also means you don't want to kind of surprise him with demands or requests about things that you know are unpleasant for him. That's a big withdrawal, right? In this relational account model, right? You're asking for him to give you a lot. And if you start negotiating in real time, then all he knows is that sometimes he gets away with saying no. Right? So, and that's, I mean, there's no winning there, right? Because if you can force him to hang out with you, then what good is that? And if he can get out of it, then now he learned that he can say no, and that doesn't happen. So it's a little bit like the question that we were talking about before, this idea of no boundaries, everybody's at the same place. Like, you're always almost spending time together, right? Instead of having a very clear division, you're like, you know what? Monday through Wednesday, I'll see you at the dinner table. Thursday at 4. Thursday at 2, whatever, right? We're all going out for a couple of hours. We're doing something together, right? Because that's what we agreed. I think that becomes much easier, less fighting, less arguing, more agreeing about things together. Jessica's really into this, huh? You're really nodding through this. That's great, thank you. So it's very reinforcing for me. So yeah, more agreeing in advance. And also another thing I wanted to say is, the time to have really thoughtful conversations is not in the middle of a conflict, obviously, and not when everybody's a little bit on edge. So this conversation about why is it even important to spend time with the family and do things together? That's a very important conversation to have. I would suggest finding a time when everybody's feeling pretty good and not threatened. Maybe it happens after you already agreed that it only happens once a week or whatever, right? And everybody kind of settle down, and then you can actually talk about it. And he would say, why is it even important for us to spend time together? And you can have an opinion and share it instead of having to kind of slam down because you're in the middle of arguing about this, right? And have a conversation about why this is important.
Okay.
Maybe everybody will learn something.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Joe and Iran. Here's a question, Iran, that I think is really important and probably applicable for a lot of parents.
Okay.
Louisa says, what's the best way to redirect communication to a more appropriate time? My daughter, elementary school age, still likes to talk a lot, which I like, but she's very sensitive. And sometimes she has a lot of questions right when it's bedtime. And when I say it's time for bed, we'll talk tomorrow, she gets really upset and starts to cry. I want to hear what she has to say, but I also want her to get enough sleep. What do you think?
That is a great question.
It's a good question.
There's this thing in kind of the clinical realm known as the doorknob question, right? When the person gets up to leave and they put their hand at the doorknob and then they turn around and say, oh, by the way, and then they give the biggest revelation of the day, kind of enticing you to keep going. So we talk a lot about how to deal with that. Okay, so first, to abstract away a little bit, I'm going to make some assumptions about the characters in the story. So I don't mean anything personally, obviously. I'm just talking about kind of kids and parents in general. I think when it's time to do something that kids are not super into, they will find any reason to get upset about it. And before being upset about it, they'll try anything they can think of in order to avoid doing that thing. So, I mean, the child may also be onto the fact that the parent wants to hear what the child has to say, and so starts talking when it's time to go to bed, right? Like it sort of works. It sure beats, you know, running out of the house and running away and being chased around. That could work too, but thankfully that's not what the child is choosing to do in order to avoid bedtime. So talking is good. And the getting upset, I don't know if it's different than how this child would be getting upset if it was time to go to sleep and the child was busy doing something else, right? Talking with friends, playing with toys, reading a story that she likes, whatever it is. So in a way, the question is more about just how do we enforce times, transition times, and how do we do it in a way, again, that's collaborative and helpful and so on. I think, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, I think it's a good idea to talk about it with the child at a time other than when it's bedtime and it's time to go. Like talk about it at noon, or talk about it when going on a fun hike together or something like that. And say, hey, you know, sometimes I know you have a lot to say when it's time to go to bed and I really want to hear everything, but you know, it's bedtime. So what do you think would be a good way? What do you think would be a good thing to do at that point? And she may have all kinds of ideas, right? Maybe she whispers it to her doll and you take the doll to the living room and then you talk with the doll. It depends on the age. I don't know what's going on there, but talk about it at another time, not at the high stress, high arousal, semi-conflict time. Otherwise, I think what you said you're doing there sounds right. You know, you say, I really want to hear all this, but now is not a good time because you need to go to bed. It's funny because usually I talk about it from the other side when we do supportive listening training, and people say, what if I don't have time to do supportive listening at that point? Like I need to go do something else. And so we talk about setting boundaries, and we talk about having a greater yes, as Stephen Covey says in the 7 Habits. You know, and you say, I really want to hear this. This is very important for me. Can we set another time to talk about this, right? That's what grown-ups do when they do it well. They don't just say, oh, I can't, or they don't say, I really want to hear, but not now. You say, I really want to hear about this. Are you free tomorrow at 6 p.m.? Because I want to make sure that we get to this. A version of this can also be done with your child, right? You can write down the topics. You can schedule a time to talk about it, and so on. In the end, I don't think I have a, you know, fantastic kind of magic solution for this issue. It's bedtime and she doesn't want to go to bed. A lot of advance warning that this is coming, discussing the situation outside when it's not too stressful, and then in the moment at some point saying, you know, I have to go. It doesn't have to be about enforcing it on the child, right? I have to go there, you know, I need to go do more things. Let's make sure that we have time to talk about these different things. If the person who asked this originally wants to kind of jump on and talk more about this, I would love to hear more, but that's kind of out of nothing. This is what I can come up with.
Well, and I want to just reconfirm, Aaron, that's such an important piece of advice embedded in there, which is be explicit. You can say to your child, wow, just like Aaron said, I really want to hear what you have to say. Maybe let's make a couple of notes or a little drawing about it, and then we'll talk again tomorrow when school is over, or we'll talk about it at lunchtime. Even very little kids, 3 and 4 years old, can get that, and they will do it with you. And teenagers really like it, because the last thing a teen wants is to be shut down. So you've got to find the times when your teen is talking. And I used to say to people, it's not polite, but I used to say, when your teen starts talking, sit down and shut up. Shut up's not a nice word. But what I meant was, you don't know when the opportunity is going to present itself again, especially now during the pandemic. So I really want every parent to think about that. The opportunity of just getting to talk with your kids is so important. Oleg is saying she seems to be having a connection problem, so she may need to ask her question to you again. I don't know if she means right now or at a later time. Oleg, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Go
Can
ahead.
you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? I'm sorry for that. So anything, you know what I mean? I'm gonna give you an example. He said he wanted something last night, and I wanted to make an agreement with him. So the moment I started talking about the boundaries of the agreement, he's like, "You don't tell me, you don't tell me, you don't tell me. I'll do what I want. You shut up. You don't know anything." And that was that. So because I didn't want to engage, and I just didn't want to. I left it like that, like always, because I don't want to engage. Otherwise, he'll get
Hmm.
very upset and he lashes out with words and with other behaviors. So, I mean, perhaps my understanding is wrong, but I think he's a 9-year-old and he needs to listen. I'm not saying do what I say, but I mean, we can talk about things, but he just does not let me. It's it's he's talking, not just either his way or the highway, but the fact that he does not, me or anybody in the household can say something, it is it's just difficult, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Because we talk, and with him it's just not possible. Even when you want to praise him on something, he shouts, he says, "No, you should. You don't tell me. I'm good. I know. That's it. Period."
Um, so, first of all, that sounds very hard. It sounds beyond kind of
It is very
logistically,
hard.
intellectually hard. It sounds emotionally like it's like an attack every time. Um, so
Oh
I'm
yeah, that's
sorry.
draining. That is very draining.
Yeah, I'm sorry that you have to deal with that so consistently. And I hear you trying to connect still positively, like it doesn't. Anyway, I have a lot of respect for you for wanting to find a way to do this well. Um, my suggestion also, we don't have a lot of time, is if you like, were you able to see the presentation? Do you have my email address?
No, I don't.
So what we could do, if we write it in the chat, will you be able to see it afterwards?
Yes, sir.
So let me type in my email address and we can set a time to talk, because I definitely don't want to leave you without an
No,
answer.
no, thank you for
And we
listening.
we can just connect and talk about this a little bit, because I think this is very important. So I sent it to all panelists, which you are, I think. Yeah, so I'll just send it also to everybody just in case, and then we just email me and we'll set a time to talk. Okay.
Sounds great. Thank you very much.
Okay. And then Jessica, you've been waiting very patiently. So you want to give us our closing
Yes.
question?
Closing
Can you
question,
hear me?
Jessica.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I
Look at the
I
road.
have
Don't look at us.
I know. I have a 9-year-old. I just had to pick up my kindergartner. That's why. But
Yeah.
I've already missed one series because I had a loss in the family, and
Mm.
my 9-year-old has been giving me a lot of attitude. And recently with this loss, I mean, I'm devastated. He was my oldest brother and my only brother, and I lost
Mm.
him. And I was very close to him, and I just kept crying. He passed away in LA, so we had to drive all the way to LA. And my daughter just did this really rude remark, like, "Oh, here you go, you're crying again." And that just, I mean, I lost it. I was just like, you know what? I'm grieving right now. My brother just passed away. Just give me time. That was like the it for me. That was the okay, like no, like you cannot be giving me attitude when I'm grieving. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know if how can I deal with this attitude. I do similar with, I think his name is Ian or somebody else who had separated, like me and her father got divorced when she was barely one. So a lot of the things have been, I have discipline at my house, like I have her pick up after her toys, I have to pick
Mm-hmm.
pick up after her own
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And at her dad's house, she's the baby, like she's goo goo gaga over there.
Yeah.
So I had to send him an email, like it's making it difficult for me because if he's not in the same page as me, it's kind of hard for her. I mean, she just wants to be over there because everything is given to her over there. But over here, I have to show her discipline. I'm not gonna give her something if she didn't do her homework, or, I don't reward her for something if she didn't do her chores. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So right now it's the challenge I'm having is with her attitude that she talks back to me.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm hearing two things. One is, okay, actually, I'm hearing three things. So one is that in general, your co-parenting situation is imbalanced, right? Where you don't have the same style, and she's kind of drawn to the place where she doesn't need to have any kind of responsibility, and there are no consequences. Which is scary, right? Because she's drawing farther from you because of that. She wants to be away.
Yeah.
So that's one. And then two is you're getting attitude from her that you don't like. She's not respectful or as obedient as you'd like. And then number three is this particular thing about what was going on when you were grieving, which is, I guess, an expression of this type of attitude. Not so much in response to something you asked her to do, but her way of kind of dismissing what you're feeling and focusing on herself.
Yes.
Okay. So the biggest, kind of the broadest issue I think that you brought up then is the issue of how differently you orient to the child. And I think this happens also in households where the two parents are together, right? People have different philosophies, and you see really different behaviors with the different parents. And I don't think anybody wants to be in the position of being like the strict parent, kind of just for the sake of being strict. It's no fun, and it's not totally clear that it's useful. I think that it is possible to have it is possible to have strong boundaries and clear expectations and still have it be a very enjoyable experience for the child, right? It's something that, for example, in this example, only you can praise her, right, for behaving responsibly, essentially, right? And especially at 9, when it's starting to be big, there's more and more opportunities for you to praise her maturity, basically, right? She is being responsible. She's being very mature about this. Like, this is wonderful. You can trust her more, probably with more things, right? And you can, so it's a coin, right? And like every coin, there are two sides to it. You're not just more strict. You're also treating her more like you would treat an independent adult.
Yeah.
Appropriately, of course. I mean, you're not overdoing it, presumably, but you have those two sides of the coin, and it's it's an opportunity for you to say, I'm expecting this of you because I believe this of you.
Yes, kind of like with the Zoom classes, like when I had my kindergartner at home, she was like, how come you're with her there all the time and you're not with me? I was like, well, because you're a little bit older. Like, I just do a little peekaboo, and I'm like, you're okay? I just open the door and I'm like, are you okay? Do you need water or something? And she's like, no. But because of her age, I'm like, because of your age, I trust and I believe in you that you're able to find your subject note, or your notes, or whatever the teacher book tells you to read, and versus to her, my 5-year-old, it's more difficult for her to find the things that she needs for her class. So that's why I talk to her, like, I feel like we have a good conversation sometimes, but then sometimes she just gives me attitude. I notice she gives me attitude more when she comes back from her dad.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So with regards to, spending more time with the younger sister and telling her, I trust you more. I think it's great. Again, the more explicit you can be about this, the better. And I wouldn't even lead with because of your age, right? It's because of her behavior. So to say, like, I know that you're responsible, I really trust your ability to do this. And your sister still has a hard time with blah, 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 but you're so great at this, right? And I am very grateful because honestly, it would be really hard for me to be with both of you at the same time, right? And so this is a big help for me as well, right? Like help her really feel good about her level of competence and responsibility.
Yeah.
And be very explicit about it. So I'm glad you're talking about it with her. I think, specifically regarding the comment, the hurtful comment that she made when you were upset. Again, it's hard to address those things constructively while upset in general. And so if there's an opportunity, my suggestion would be to process this separately, when neither of you is upset, and say, I want to talk a little bit about what happened. I'm not upset with you. You're not in trouble, right? But I just want to talk a little bit about what happened there because mommy was really sad, and you were basically telling me not to be sad, and sometimes you're sad, and so on.
Yeah, well, I had to sit down with her and kind of like tell her, do you know what's happening? Like, because it made me feel like she didn't know it was happening. So
Yeah.
I had to sit with her and tell her, are you aware that your uncle passed away and that we're never going to see him again? And she's like, yeah, I know. It's just like, I mean, I feel like she understands it, but I will have that conversation with her as to when I'm grieving, or even sometimes like yesterday I felt really, really exhausted, and one of my friends called me and I had her on speaker, and she's like, oh, you guys should come over and to get the girls and your mind off of things. And I said, I'll think about it because I'm really tired and I feel like I just need to go to sleep, and my oldest one, she extremely got mad. She's like, I can't believe we're not going. Like, why can't we go? I want to go. You're so boring. Like, you never want to do anything. And it's just like, I felt like she doesn't have empathy. I feel like she doesn't feel my pain, and she just doesn't have any consideration. That's how I feel,
Yeah, you need her. I mean, you're running on fumes sometimes, right? You need the person closest to you a lot of the time physically, just to understand what's happening, right? And also appreciate the amount of investment you're making. I think Charlene wants to say something.
Jessica, first of all, I want to say thank you, everybody. We are running a little long, but it's so important. If you need to sign off, we certainly understand, but thank you all for coming. If you can stick with us. Jessica, I just had one more thing to add to Iran's wise words, and that is, when I was teaching young children, we would get into sometimes negative loops with kids who were exhibiting a lot of what we considered poor behavior, whether it was aggression or whatever. And we'd do a reboot. So the entire staff would just pour positivity on that kid for 2 weeks. And I think maybe you need a reboot. Like Iran said, try to be as positive, catch her being good, catch her saying things that you like, catch her being respectful. And that is the easiest way to change the conversation with a kid, to turn the page.
Yeah, so I'll tag team on that. I'll try to make it a little more concrete. I think it's very good advice. So there may be times when she is being respectful or even empathetic. They may be rare, but they may exist. When they happen, if you can make an enormously big deal out of it, that can orient her well toward that. And without, remember, like not mixing the good and the bad, right? So if she's saying something very supportive, rather, making a big deal of it and not saying, that was wonderful, that was so different than how you were hurtful and offensive last time, that was so much better. Not to do that at all. She's saying something great and you're like, that was amazing, thank you so, that's exactly what I needed to hear, I'm so happy now, let's go have French fries. Like play dirty, like reinforce hard the things that you like, and try to catch her being good, like Charlene was saying. The other thing that I would say is, separately from all this, and at the risk of offering advice that's impossible to follow, prioritize recharging your battery, because you can't just run on empty and get pummeled and then like be reasonable and thoughtful and mindful with your children. Like that's impossible, right? So as long as everybody's basically safe, find times, like be very intentional about finding times and opportunities to recharge your battery once a week, twice a week, just for you, and just activities that actually make you feel more energized after. So not total escape activities, but things that actually make you feel better at the end of that, whatever it is.
Okay.
Well, that is
Thank you.
great advice. Thank you, Jessica, for sharing. And thank you, Iran,
Thank
for all
you.
the wonderful advice today, and for everybody who joined with us and stayed with us. We really enjoyed it. We hope that you'll join us again for the next Parent Forum in December. And we know this is a hard time, parents. You're doing a great job. You really are. But joining today and talking and sharing and listening, even if that was as much as you could do today is listen, we are grateful and we wish you well. So take care, everybody, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thank
Okay,
you, everybody.
thank you. Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.